Hello everyone and welcome back to our daily devotions. This video is being recorded to be broadcast on Monday, February 7th of 2022. And we are beginning a new book. We just finished up John's Gospel. Now we are going to back up and go to Matthew's Gospel. Matthew, of course, shows up in the first place in the New Testament. It is the very first book. And that was very often the case, more times than not, when people put together, even before the canon was canonized, people tended to put Matthew as the beginning of the New Testament books that they would collect. Some books made it into the canon, some which they did not. Different people had different collections back in the very early years, and some of those books did not get canonized, and some did. But Matthew often came up front, partly because there was the tradition, though it's not internally mentioned whether Matthew was the author or not. There is no attestation as to who wrote this book internally, but it was given to that fairly early. I'm not sure how many years. This book was probably written after the Gospel of Mark. We typically think of the four Gospels that Mark was written first, then Matthew and Luke written in fairly quick succession, one to the other. They're probably usually dated within about 5 years of one another. Mark was written sometime after the fall of Rome, I believe, after the fall of Jerusalem as well. So the destruction of the temple, which would have been 70, and then these would have been written maybe sometime in 80, 85-ish. John written closer to 90 AD. Some date John even later, or later than that, as being in the second century even, which I don't think that's true. But none of the four Gospels are internally attested to as to who was the author. That's important to always remember that. So this is Matthew. It is the most Jewish of the Gospels. That would be a reason to put it first. Was preferred over Mark's Gospel because it's longer and it's got more details in it. Mark's Gospel is a very short staccato Gospel. It's generally believed, though, by current scholars that Mark was written first and that the author of Matthew and Luke had a copy of Mark along with other documents. Matthew had something that Luke didn't have, and Luke had something that Matthew didn't have, but they both had this mysterious document called Q, or Quilla, or source. Quilla means source in German. So the Q source is what we call it. We have never found a copy of Q. People have put together what they think was in Q based off of what's in Matthew and in Luke. But we don't know. There could have been things that were in Q that were never picked up, what have you. And some attribute the differences in the content of Matthew and Luke as in being what they did or didn't pick up. So they throw all of that into Q. We just don't know. We've never found a copy of Q. If we found a copy of Q, that would probably be one of the greatest and the most groundbreaking discoveries in biblical archaeology in decades, if not ever. That would be a tremendous thing. It would rival the Dead Sea Scrolls. Let's put it that way. It would rival the Dead Sea Scrolls. So we have this document that we believe that they have similar stories in them. There's a lot of similarity. That's why we call these three Gospels the Synoptics. So Matthew was placed at the beginning of the canon. It was favored among the early church fathers because it is more complete. It's more complete than Mark is. And it is a very Jewish document. It is written with a Jewish bent. There's a great deal of scholarly research that goes into how it's structured. It is a literary masterpiece as to the way Matthew structured it to emulate the Torah, the 5 basic breakdowns in it. In it, we have Jesus proclaimed as the new David and the new Moses and greater than David or Moses, because obviously he's God. But so you have the craftings going on in it. It gets very complicated, Matthew can, in all of that, and I can't do justice to that with my stark memory of memorizing things. There are some good videos out there. I may put a link to one of them below this that you can watch that gives you some breakdown of literary construction of or Matthew's gospel rather. So it starts right off with this horrible thing for us modern readers, the genealogy of Jesus the Messiah, because we've got to stumble over and deal with all these Old Testament names, which like crazy. Who would want to do this? Well, the early Jews loved genealogy, and it was a way of showing your connection to the past. And so in this genealogy in Matthew's, it goes through Joseph's line rather than Mary, and it goes back to Abraham. Okay, so Abraham, the father Abraham, the Abrahamic religions, Christianity, Judaism, and Islam are believed to be all Abrahamic religions. So it goes back to Father Abraham. But we have David in here, and we have what's crazy. We have 4 different women, and 3 of them are Gentiles, and we have different Gentiles in here. We have women that were sexually immoral. So we have. It is what it is, I guess. It shows all the warts and all, as we might say. But it is important, and it is structured on this structure of 14s. We talk about there are 14 generations and 14 generations and 14 generations. We have 3 14s. There is some argument with that one of them is actually only 13, and that we're in the 14th generation. But we end up with it's numerically significant. I've heard it said that David's name in Hebrew adds up to the number 14, represents number 14, and that's why this is done that way. This is the king, the son of David, in the line of David. But there's a problem. Matthew, whoever wrote this, skipped some generations from in a few places. He kind of forced the match, but that wasn't uncommon. You're the son of someone if you're their grandfather or great-grandfather or great-great-grandfather, and we can say, so that was fair play to do that. So they've done that here. There is some forced matching in this genealogy, we believe. So, but that I apologize for my slaughtering of these Old Testament names, but we'll read it off, and then we'll maybe talk a little bit more, and then we'll talk a little bit about, as we go into these first few studies, we'll talk a little bit about the history of the book and all of that, and the canon and such as we go along. So let's jump right in. We're going to look at the first 17 verses in the first chapter of Matthew's Gospel, and I will be doing this study as I've done most all of the others. There's been a few that I used a different translation, but here we're going to use the New Revised Standard Version for Matthew's study. And if I happen to use a different one day or another, I'll try to remember to mention that I'm not using the NRSV for whatever reason. But for scholarly study, I think the NRSV is probably the preferred. That's what my mentor imposed upon me or ingrained within me. That's what my mentor Jesse, was big on. He believed the NRSV was the most scholarly, accurate translation. I might argue with him a little bit. I actually prefer the RSV, the Revised Standard Version, not the new one. But whatever, we'll let that be what it may. Let's jump right in. An account of the genealogy of Jesus, the Messiah, the son of David, the son of Abraham. Abraham was the father of Isaac, and Isaac the father of Jacob, and Jacob the father of Judah and his brothers, and Judah the father of Perez and Zerah by Tamar, and Perez the father of Hezron, and Hezron the father of Amar, and Amar the father of Aminadab, and Aminadab the father of Nahshon, and Nahshon the father of Salmon, and Solomon the father of Boaz by Rahab, and Boaz the father of Obed by Ruth, and Obed the father of Jesse, and Jesse the father of King David. And David was the father of Solomon by the wife of Uriah, and Solomon the father of Rehoboam, and Rehoboam the father of Abijah, and Abijah the father of Asaph, and Asaph the father of Josepheth, and Josepheth the father of Joram, and Joram the father of Uzziah, and Uzziah the father of Jotham, and Jotham the father of Ahaz, and Ahaz the father of Hezekiah, and Hezekiah the father of Manasseh, and Manasseh the father of Amos, and Amos the father of Joseph, and Joseph the father of Jehoiakim and his brothers at the time of the deportation of Babylon. And after the deportation of Babylon, Jehoiakim was the father of Salathiel, and Salathiel the father of Zerubbabel, and Zerubbabel the father of Abudim, and Abudim the father of Elikim, and Elikim the father of Azor, and Azor the father of Zadokah, and Zadokah the father of Achim, and Achim the father of Elud, and Elud the father of Eleazar, and Eleazar the father of Matthian, and Matthian the father of Jacob, and Jacob the father of Joseph, and the husband of Mary, of whom Jesus was born, who is called the Messiah. So all the generations from Abraham to David are 14 generations, and from David to the deportation to Babylon, 14 generations, and from the deportation to Babylon to the Messiah, 14 generations. And again, that's significant, that 14 to 14, 14. And I apologize to anyone that's fluent in Hebrew that I slaughtered that. My renter Jesse is in heaven with his ears burning that I butchered Hebrew that he loves so much, so horribly. But hey, I barely can speak English, much less reading Hebrew or Greek for that matter. But again, this is the beginning. These genealogies are very important. It establishes who we are and who they were, and what their genealogy was, what their inheritance was. And so he took Jesus all the way back to Father Abraham, because that's important. He is, through him, all are blessed. And that's the promises. That's the prophecy. So this is about, Matthew is very much about fulfilling prophecy. So it is, again, it's the most Jewish. And we'll try to point out as we go through this, the Jewishness of this book. So I believe I've gotten quite long here. I'm not sure. We're 11, almost 12 minutes. So that's significant. We are sufficient, we should say. I don't want to get these too long again. So with that, I'm going to let you go. We'll pick up tomorrow and we'll finish chapter 1, I believe, tomorrow. That's my intention. Yes, the birth of the Messiah. And then we will keep going forward from there. And again, this is Matthew's gospel. We'll give you a little more history about Matthew's tomorrow before we start. Have a blessed day and have a blessed week. And please, please, please be a blessing to someone today. We'll see you all later. Bye-bye.